So welcome everybody to the second hour of MindShifters Radio, and today is Tuesday, July the 18th, 2023. And our call-in number is 563-999-581, and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. And we'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. And, you know, Dr. Tim was talking about a hardship or a challenge is a gift, and it was really kind of cute. You know, we weren't supposed to have Aria till Wednesday and Thursday this week, but her other grandpa had surgery on his knee, so we had her yesterday and today, and we'll have her again tomorrow. But last night we had kind of a little flood in the kitchen and overflow of a pan by the sink, and anyway, it kind of made a mess, and so when she came today, I was like wiping off cans and things like that and putting them back in there, and we had let a fan run all night in the cabinet to dry it out. And she was asking me about it, and I said, well, we had a flood. I said, we had kind of a mess, and so she wanted to know why I was saying it was a flood and everything. And she goes, well, Nene, everything is nice and clean and shiny now. So it's like, yeah, the challenge was definitely a blessing. Now the kitchen cabinet's cleaned out, and a lot of the pantry stuff has been straightened out and gotten rid of old stuff into the compost. So, yeah, it was a blessing, and so it just depends on how you look at it. And I appreciate her beautiful innocence when she looks at things like that. And so anyway, we
look on the bright side of life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And let's see, Susan just sent me a text. Let me see what it says. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted that you're here. We get to carry this conversation on to the next level as we move into deeper and deeper understanding of this first century Aramaic set of tools that was left to us 2,000 years ago by this man named Yeshua, and how profound and how powerful it is. And kind of related to yesterday and the insight that I shared yesterday, I'm really more and more realizing when doing some research. I spoke with someone yesterday who said, oh, there are these two people that are doing a debate. There's spiritual teacher type things. And so, you know, go listen to their debate. And my first thought was, well, the root of the word debate is to beat. Why would these guys who are spiritual teachers want to beat each other? And I listened, and it was just like the height of intellectual, not even sure what to call it, just like kind of bantering back and forth intellectually. And it sort of related for me to that thing yesterday we looked at. So the mind of man has these high philosophies, and I forget who it was, somebody in history said to Horatio, I believe it was, you know, you're higher than your philosophies have ever considered. And when we have this mind of man, when we have carbon-based memory generating constructs called perception, they can sound so highfalutin and so wonderful and so exciting and so much fun, but they are, and no matter how high level they are, they're absolutely nothing when it comes to living in the actuality. And the ultimate objective of this work is to be freed from that process, to enter into a whole different level, a whole different realm of experience and expression that allows us to directly act as human beings with the actuality of the world. And so that's what our objective is here, and I'm delighted to be able to have been able to interact with this Aramaic formula called forgiveness and the correlated tools that have developed out of it, brought 2,000 years ago by this first century teacher that just had such a level of comprehension. And I sort of get a visual of, imagine standing in the mind but reaching up to a whole other dimension and working to bring that other dimension into the mind. When people have what we call a spiritual experience, it usually takes time for them to integrate into their minds, to get their minds to even start to understand it or to be able to talk about it. Listen to people who've had a near-life experience where they've gone into clinical death and the mind breaks down, the mind stops, and all of a sudden there's this, it's been called a near-death experience, but it is anything but that. When carbon-based memory collapses, we get the opportunity to step into the truth, into the experience of who we are without reference to and without the filter of the past, pretending it knows. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. And Miss Jeanie? Do we have anybody on the phone with the hand up or anybody in the chat room?
There are no questions, and I just checked my email, and I haven't received any questions. Oops, a hand just went up, and I believe it is Miss Audrey, 520. You are on the air.
Welcome.
Hi. Thank you. I have a couple questions. One.
Great.
Oh my goodness! Somebody just walked in my house. What a timing. When I was
do you need to pay attention who came in and called us back?
It's a nurse. Maybe you could address this on air, and you could unmute me. The question is, I was brought up by a parental figure who said, God is going to punish you.
Yeah.
Okay? That is a belief system that I do a little bit of work on, and it just comes right back. How long? And then I was, with the family of origin that belief system had originated in. Well, it originated within me a long time ago. Then it was the family of origin. And then I was made to go to church, and I didn't understand what was going on because it was in Latin, but I did go to catechism, I guess you would say religious training, where I would be told to say these words for forgiveness. I didn't understand what was going on. Now, that is rooted someplace within me. And I feel like an elephant, the baby elephant, that you put the rope around it, and it's conditioned to stay within a period of time, and soon the elephant knows, I can't go out there. I'd like to take this off the air, and you talk about, I know the process is forgiveness, but it's a core being belief, and then all of a sudden I come upon, say, a group of people that's telling me God loves me. All right, now one, I've been conditioned, God is going to punish you, you're bad. Reinforced, like rulers be hit on my fingers when I couldn't get the words in order. Now, that's my core being. Okay, the worksheet is how I process it. Okay, could you talk about people who have these core belief systems? I think it's the greatest travesty known to mankind to get the belief of you will burn in hell eternally. That's so damaging, and I have this damaging belief system within me. So I'd like to listen to anything you have to say. Could you unmute me if you do have anything to say about it?
Sure, I have some thoughts to offer. You know, one of the things we know is that when people go into denial, the end result is projection. And denial is the belief, when I either think or speak as though something outside of me is the cause of what's moving inside of me. When I live in denial, I have to hide things from myself. And then the very things that I hide from myself are the things that show up in what, I talked about just a few minutes ago as the mind of man. And so when people harbor pain and trauma and abuse, whatever or whoever they turn their attention to, when that's triggered into activity, they'll project that into their brain's image of whoever they're focused on. And so we hear the plain, simple fact in the ancient scriptures that the Creator is love. Not that the Creator loves us, but that the Creator is love. When we realize that love is the root energy of creation, the energy behind the universe, and when people fall out of harmony with that, and it starts, it's interesting, in the Course in Miracles it speaks of a tiny mad idea. When we buy into a mad ideas, when the mind engages in them, hurts physiologically, hurts emotionally, hurts psychologically. And it's not a big leap for somebody then to deny that they're putting the hurt on themselves, and in that denial, they'll project that hurt into whoever they're focused on. So it might be a punishing parent, it might be a punishing government, or it might be love itself, which is a pretty insane thought. And sadly, generations and generations and centuries of tradition have, because people have dissociated from their own punishment thoughts, their own abusive thoughts, had to find somebody to blame for it. So let's blame love. Let's blame the Creator. We'll make the Creator the creator of this hot, fiery place. And actually, if you look historically from the Aramaic perspective, there was a dump outside of Jerusalem that was called the Gehenna, the fiery place. Literally, it was a garbage dump, and it was also a place where, when people could not afford what was called a proper funeral, their bodies were burned. When they died, their bodies were burned at the Gehenna. And it seems that became a threat with children. If you don't behave, I'll send you to the Gehenna, the fiery place. And that seemed to work pretty well, so they created a place like that for big people. My offering is, and I know there are people who will want to send me to hell for saying this, is that that's a total fantasy projected from punishing men and women who don't want to own their own internal violence, and so have to project it into their brain's image of someone, and why not God? And sadly, it has left millions and millions of people in terror and trauma, and afraid to even question the idea because they're threatened with this thing called hell. If you think love is going to threaten you, then you've got a mistaken perception of love, would be my offering. That it isn't even back when Yeshua was here, there was this story that Yeshua was God, and that, there was going to be this judgment day. Now, 2,000 years ago, what should I call them? Those who lived in denial in that time said, Yeshua's here to judge you and send you to your punishment. And Yeshua really clearly said, not my job. I am not here to condemn humanity. I'm here to save humanity. I'm here to give humanity the tools with which to unload this burdensome lie that God's angry with them. Love and anger are inconsistent with each other. It's just a plain, simple, projected lie. Once one recognizes that, then one obviously goes to work undoing the lie that's been reinforced. And sadly, the bigger the authority is in someone's life, the deeper the implanted ideas go into the mind. And so religious authorities, religious hierarchies, the authorities in the church, teachers in schools who are also authorities, and then parents who don't know any better tend to reinforce it. And when you get that all three barrels coming from those three sources, it's implanted pretty deeply. So the first order of business to me is to be in the willingness to question and to confront the lies of authority. And there are lots of them. Is there anywhere that it makes sense that love is going to condemn you? And 2,000 years ago, when this man named Yeshua says, I'm not interested in judging anybody, you'll notice that after he left, they made up a story that, well, in the end, he's going to come and judge you. There's going to be Judgment Day. Well, I believe in non-Judgment Day. I think it's all just a major fraud. It's crazy. He was really clear. I'm not here to do that. Why would he do it, at some point out in infinity somewhere? It's just a silly projection of minds who didn't know any better and did not understand how to function in harmony with the mind in them that was love's mind, and therefore used threat to control. If you look at the word discipline, the culture has a meaning for the word discipline, and it pretty much means properly beat up. You got to beat them into submission. Spare the rod, spoil the child. I shared last week on the show, we watched a video called Shiny Happy People on Amazon, and one of the things that they exposed was that this religious group, which claims to have trained over 2.5 million people, used to do a thing with children that they called blanket time. And there's a voice recording of one of the women who sourced this idea, and she's talking like she's talking to her children, explaining this. Oh, come on, kids, we're going to do blanket time. This is going to be so much fun, and it's exciting. And what does blanket time look like? They take a child at 6 months of age, they put it on the blanket and put some kind of a toy just out of reach of the child. And if the child reaches for the toy, they hit it. And if the child reaches for the toy again, they hit it again. And if the child reaches for the toy again, then they hit it one more time until the child stops reaching for the toy. And they acknowledge, or they speak of, this is to break the child's spirit. Thank you very much, but I'd rather have the most spirited, intuitive, truth-seeking child in the world than a child whose spirit is broken. And support that and recognize that the word discipline comes from the word disciple, and the word means properly taught. Adults who live in hostility, fear, sadness, grief, rage, pain, drama, and trauma have no idea how to discipline a child, have no idea how to properly teach a child, so it's easier to say something like, spare the rod. You'll remember in the scriptures, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. They are support. You have a rod to hold on to help you to stand up straight, not to beat a kid with. But those who've been beaten into submission will tend to carry on the family tradition of beating others into submission. And my offering is it's total and complete hogwash, and any individual who has been beaten into submission has a significant amount of forgiveness work to do to literally remove from their structures the pain and trauma inflicted to, quote unquote, break one's spirit. To me, the object would be to step up to the plate as love, have teachers who are able to exist at that level of love and inspire through love the children to maintain all of their spiritual faculties. You know, there's one spiritual faculty that is abhorred by adults who are living a lie. Most adults live in a lie. The example I like to use is, let's imagine that Mom's standing out by the fence talking to the neighbor, Mrs. Jones, and they're chatting over the fence, and little Johnny's 2.5. Johnny still lives in the spiritual realm of intuition, and Johnny doesn't listen to words so much as Johnny watches and experiences intuitively the energy that's going on. Mr. Jones comes out of the house, comes over, and gives his wife a peck on the cheek as he's going to work. And little Johnny looks, and he can see the daggers. He can see the energy that's going on between Mr. and Mrs. Jones. And little Johnny says, "Gee, Mr. Jones, why do you hate your wife so much?" He can see the energy. He can sense the energy. Everybody else has denied it and pretends it's not there. They don't find out about it until they find out that Mrs. Jones was killed by her husband. Cancel the thought. But what does Mom do when little Johnny speaks up and says that? Turns around and slaps him in the head. "Don't you ever say anything like that again." In other words, don't use your intuition. Don't be in touch with the truth. We are a nation of liars. We lie to each other all the time. We don't tell each other the truth, and you're not allowed to know the truth. So I'm going to punish you into submission until there is so much pain in you that it will override your intuition, and you will not know what is true and what is false. And sadly, that has been an energy that I think has permeated our whole culture. And it's time for us to wake up and live in the truth, and to support our children having full knowledge, full intuition, full function, full imagination, totally and completely with those spiritual faculties. And, of course, to do that, we're going to have to step deeper and deeper into telling ourselves and each other the truth and acknowledging that. So yes, you're right. The forgiveness tool is the tool that's going to be applied there. And, you know, if we look back through history, you know, you look at medieval history, and you look at even, you know, going back further than that, you look at the Inquisitions and such, and this thing of lying and controlling people and punishing and destroying lives has been going on for so long that if you choose to wake up from that, there's going to be a deeply significant amount of work to be done to clean it up. And so that would be my take on it. The truth is, you and I, each one of us is created of this energy called love, including Mr. and Mrs. Jones and Mom and little Johnny. And the sooner we recapture the truth of who we are and speak from and function from that, the better off the whole society and civilization is going to be. Yes, there's going to be a lot of old developed dogma that's going to have to be confronted and dissolved. A lot of lies have been told by the church as well. You know, churchianity to a great degree has lied all along the way because they were functioning out of this mind that did not understand. I remember being invited to a church in Springfield, Missouri that I normally might not have gone to, and the minister was up front, and it was a setup. He was married, and his wife and his little son were sitting up on the altar with him. And he gets up to do his sermon, and he's doing this, you know, really hot sermon on love. And his son, who's maybe 3, kind of breaks loose of mom's grasp and runs over to daddy, arms up, and, wanting daddy's attention, wanting love. It's like, all I got what that preacher was all about, just watching the fire and the venom with which he turned to his child because his child would dare interrupt his sermon about love. The truth was, it was a perfect place for this man to break right in the middle of his sermon, bend down, pick his child up, hold his child, bring his child into the expression of love that he was talking about. But then he'd had to have broken through the abuse that was done to him when he interrupted his parents. And that's the sort of thing that just, needs to be cleaned up. And so the cleanup work is done with forgiveness. And that's why we're so focused on bringing that tool out to the world on a global scale. So that would be my input around that. I hope that moves in the direction of what you were looking for, Audrey. If you have any other thoughts, Miss Jeanie, maybe open Audrey's microphone again, and let's see if she's still there. Are there any other thoughts?
She actually has dropped off. I think I heard her say that it was a nurse that was there.
Okay.
Anyway, she has dropped off, so I'm assuming
she can get the archive.
Yeah. Right. Also, just to add a little bit to that, I thought of a paper that I wrote actually when I was in college, and it was on learned helplessness. And you can go to like Psychology Today or any of those, and they write about it all the time. That it's an actual thing. It's not something that we've made up to talk about here. It's that a person, or it even goes for an animal, has tried unsuccessfully through certain behaviors to get a different result, and so they learn that nothing they do is going to change the outcome or whatever, and so they don't even try. They just quit. And an example that they had given, and it's really kind of comical, but it's exactly what we do, is this dog that, he knew that he couldn't go out through, there was a glass door, glass storm door or whatever, except the glass in the storm door was missing. But the dog had learned, that it couldn't go past that until its owner opened the door. And so the owner would even step through the doorway and call for the dog. And it would sit there until he actually opened the frame of the door, and then the dog would walk through. But it had learned, I can't go through there until you open the doorway. And we do the same thing. I think that was part way. It takes a lot to break through that and to get to the other side. Part of that is, I was I got married at 16 and was married for 3 years to this guy who abused me constantly. And it was like, there's nothing I can do to get out of this. I deserve this. This is what I get for getting married so young, or whatever stories I told myself. And it was a lot to break through and get out of that situation. And so, we have just been brainwashed that this is the way it is, and like you said, conditioned that you're bad and you deserve whatever's going on. And just like the little child that you were talking about, Michael, on the blanket, it learns at a very, very young age that if it wants something, it can't have it because something's going to happen that hurts, and so it quits trying. And it's a learned helplessness and consistent victimhood.
One of the other sad scenes in this movie, you can watch it on Amazon, it's actually a docuseries, was a child of this couple. These very famous preacher-type TV folks. And this child's about 2.5, maybe 3, and she's reciting, like, I'm not sure how to describe it, like compulsive reciting that I listen and I obey immediately. I listen, words to the effect of I listen and I obey immediately. I obey immediately. And this is the authoritarian game that so many people in the realm of churchianity, I won't say religion, I'll say churchianity, and it's totally, completely fake, nothing whatsoever to do with God. It is the mind of man forcing humans into non-humanhood. And sadly, it has destroyed many lives and left many people in a space of total rejection of the fact that we literally, physiologically live in a world of conscious, active, present love. And yet, when abused, the mind floods that world with the energy of the abuse that's been suffered until forgiveness occurs and removes it. And so we're here to facilitate that removal and to give the tools to each person to recognize that so much of what's called dogma and doctrine has nothing whatsoever to do with what Yeshua came to bring. You know, you'll never find anywhere in Yeshua's words where he says, I come to bring you doctrine, I come to bring you dogma. Actually, he's got a really simple statement about what he's here for. He says, quote, I come to bring you life, life more abundantly. And the best definition I've found yet of life, Audrey, is that life is love flowing through a cell. Anything that we do, including the worst that churchianity's got to offer, not there aren't some wonderful things that are offered there too, but the worst that churchianity's got to offer inhibits the flowing of life through a cell, and anything that does that is off mark. And it's time for us to get back on the mark. So that's what we're here to do. So thank you for that question. Appreciate the opportunity to address that issue. I think it's a really, really important one. And we'll hold the space, Audrey, and anywhere along the way that you need any support in undoing that. And there can be some really painful moments. You know, oftentimes these kinds of inane, insane, supposedly religious ideas are reinforced with rejection, with punishment, with physical, mental, emotional, and even sexual abuse. And so anytime that there's any layer that you're having a challenge or anyone's having a challenge working through, we're here to facilitate and support those layers being cleared out so that we truly get to experience human life as it's designed to be experienced. And the bottom line about human life is that human life is love. And life is love flowing through a cell. That's what we're designed for.
And we have two hands up.
Great. Let's say hello.
And the first one, I believe, is Celinda, 541. You're on the air.
Hello. How are you today?
Hey, welcome, young lady. We're rocking. How about you?
Oh, I'm a little rocky, but I'm rocking.
Okay.
I wanted to comment on your comments and Audrey's questions. After my first husband died and I was in Marin County, I got involved with a charismatic, Episcopalian charismatic movement, which led me to Jesus People. And I got pretty involved in a Jesus People ministry. And there was a young gentleman who decided he was the leader of the group, or the group decided, someone decided. And I remember him saying one time, it was the first, I think about one of the first, not the first, but one of the first questionings I had about religious teachings. And he said, what he said about that, we're here to break the spirit of the child, was a little different. What he said is we're here to break the child's will, not their spirit. And at the time, I thought that sounded a little strange, but I was a born-again Christian, really involved in that, so I went along with it for a while. But when I observed the results in my relationship with my daughter, and I realized I was going down the same path my mother went with me, I quit. And I said, how do you break a child's will without breaking their spirit? It's not possible. So I thought I'd share that with you. Also, that
right on, and that's the same.
Yeah.
Just to throw a thought in with that, and that's, there are basically 5 spiritual faculties, and one of them is will, and one of the other ones is intuition. And I started out speaking about how the world, as quickly as it can, shuts down intuition, and it's the same thing with will. Rather than supporting the child in love and supporting their will, which is one of the faculties we were given for developing a life, for living a life. And yet, someone with willpower, the ego's cheap copy of that spiritual faculty, wants to destroy it because they are authoritarian and controlling.
Absolutely. And then another observation I made that pushed me further away from religiosity was I was in Honolulu one time. I was a representative on the board of the Episcopal Church. I'll get this out yet. And I got off the bus to go to the cathedral, and there was this very harsh voice. And when I listened to it for a little while, seeing over all of the crowds, I realized that it was someone giving a sermon. And it was a similar experience to what you experienced. There was a Salvation Army woman on a little stool or something, on her little soapbox, giving this amazing sermon in her mind about love and Christ's love for us. And yet the whole face of that lady was contorted with rage, and the whole tone of her voice was contorted with rage. And people were passing her by, and I don't even remember a group gathered, just mostly people passing by her, like almost trying to avoid her. That was a very profound lesson for me.
I hear you. There's that old saying of, I am so tapped in and can hear so loudly in my intuition who you are that I didn't hear a word you said. When somebody's functioning out of that, it's like, and obviously the music and the message don't go together very well in too many cases.
The energy field in the message, for sure. That's interesting. Yes. You put it in terms of music. Also, I don't know if you've ever read, I believe his name is David Martin. I don't know if you've ever read David Martin's book, Lizards Eat Butterflies.
No.
Dr. Tim turned me on to it. Well, didn't turn me on to it. I turned me on to it. But he had mentioned it in one of his broadcasts. So I went out and convinced the library to buy it, and then I read it. And he's talking about, very interesting read, by the way, he's talking about the scientists have discovered there are 12 cranial nerves.
Yes.
And that every 5 of them are connected to the 5 senses. 7 of them, they don't have a clue where they go. And I thought,
well, actually,
is intuition one of the? Is intuition one of the spiritual faculties? Is intuition one of them?
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering if there were 6 spiritual faculties. I thought you heard you say one time that there were actually, you had come across the 6th spiritual practice, but faculty, but I'm not sure if I heard that correctly. But it came to my mind that if we have 5 senses that go to the left brain, and intuition, which I would think, even though it's a spiritual faculty, I feel it in my gut area. It's like a sensory perception for me that the left brain can hook into if it's not trained out of it. And then the 5 other spiritual faculties, my impression in my observation, in my just sitting and questioning, was I would think that those other nerves, cranial nerves, are somehow connected with either the right brain, the reflex brain, or of the spiritual faculties, because I had also heard at one point in my journey, my spiritual journey, that I think it was educational kinesiology, that the left brain, the conscious brain, whatever it is, will only accept the 5 senses. It's an observational brain, an evidential brain, and it'll only accept the 5 physical senses, but it's not because they don't come into it. It's because it blocks them. Whereas, and that would make perfect sense to me if all of the cranial nerves had to do with ways of perceiving or experiencing, or like the spiritual faculties, or also our conscious physical faculties. That would make perfect sense to me, that those 7 other ones probably are involved with the reflex brain or the emotional brain or whatever you want to call it, the intuitive brain, and it's just that the conscious brain will not accept them.
Well, that's an interesting thought. Actually, the 10th cranial nerve is one that we're very acquainted with, and that is called the vagus nerve. And it's called vagus, the word vagus there meaning wandering nerve, and it actually innervates the whole body, and in particular rest, digestion, and elimination. And it's the alternative, or it's the nerve that has to be functioning in order for us to sleep properly, in order for us to digest properly, in order for elimination to occur. And where most people live in sympathetic dominance, fear is active. And when fear is active, sympathetic dominance, blood flow is shunted away from the rest, digest, elimination, and higher brain function parts of the structure. Blood flow literally is shunted away from that to survival, to the larger muscles to either fight or run, and to the lungs in order to take in more oxygen for survival. And when people, and most people in our culture live, especially brought up in the kind of fear-based culture that we've been talking about, live in that sympathetic dominant state chronically. And when one lives in that state chronically, the pathways, and this is one of the places, we're going to have a conversation after the show about the Avicen. We've arranged to do that, but the pathways to those rest, digest, elimination, and higher brain functions, if chronically shut down because the blood flow has been shunted away, end up becoming congested. And there are actually, there are a lot of people who are, especially in the therapy world, trauma therapy and such, are working with the vagus nerve, trying to stimulate, trying to get it operational or active again. And I've never seen anywhere that it's understood that the blood flow has to be restored, and if there's congestion because of chronic restricted blood flow to those functions, then you can stimulate that vagus nerve all you want, and you won't get proper rest, and you won't get proper digestion or elimination or higher brain function. And that's one of the powers and the superpowers of the Avicen, is to open that blood flow again and to, over time, clear out the congestion from chronic restriction of blood flow. If you think about a stream where there's a chronic restriction, i.e., we have this beautiful, nice, cool stream that runs by the house. It's clean, beautiful drinking water, smells good, and one day a restriction happens. A tree falls over the stream. All of a sudden, debris coming downstream gets caught in this tree, and it's not long before, instead of a creek, you've got a swamp. That's exactly what happens in the blood vessels. And what happens in the swamp? Things grow that don't belong there. It starts to have smells that you'd never smell from the creek, and you better not drink it because it could be deadly. And the same thing happens in the blood flow throughout the whole body, and this vagus nerve literally runs through the whole body, touching every one of those organs that contribute to the functions we're talking about. And so when you use the Avicen, the blood flow is restored, and over time the chronic congestion, like the swamp, gets cleaned out, and those higher functions take off. That's one of the things we see with the Avicen.
Well, that's very interesting, because that only leaves us with one we haven't sorted. One cranial nerve, if that's a possibility. I don't know. If we have the 5 senses that are accounted for as 5 of those cranial nerves, we have the vagus nerve, which is the 6th one, and we have 5 spiritual truths. Doesn't that only leave one for us to play with and see? And it's all possibilities, right? It doesn't mean it's true. It's just, I thought, what an exciting field to play in.
Right. Well, it certainly, what I hear is that you've perhaps brought through something very powerfully from your intuition, and that is something worth doing some deeper research into to see just how that relates. Makes sense.
The spiritual scientific method sounds good to me.
You got it.
Also, between this show with Dr. Tim's show and my book is archivable. It is exactly what I needed to hear anyway. With Dr. Tim, what he read, the ideas he put forth, the possibilities he put forth, his conversation with Susan, right spot on for me. And what's your conversation and Jeanie's conversation now? I'm going to take this archive and see if I can't get it to David Martin, because I thought that Lizards Eat Butterflies was a great book.
Awesome. I'd love to have a conversation with him. Anywhere that you can open a door for us to take this work into, folks like that, that we can expand and keep moving it around, any support in that direction is deeply appreciated.
Yeah, and he is like a renegade in the corporate structure from my point of view. Now, that's just my observation. I mean, he's out there learning for himself how best to help the world, and apparently he does a lot of conflict work with indigenous cultures and the big corporations that try to muscle in on them. And and we all have growing edges. We all can learn from each other. It's the great smorgasbord of life. I love smorgasbords because I get to eat exactly what I want and leave the rest. And it all comes together in the end, because sometimes it leads me to something I wouldn't have tried originally. So it's just a great expanded table of abundance. So anyway, I'm looking forward to our conversation, and I just wanted to share this on the show because I thought this might be something that I'm fascinated with, those 12 cranial nerves, and I just thought I'd share my questionings and my personal research.
All right, young lady, thank you. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you in a little bit.
Bye-bye.
All righty. Take care. Bye-bye.
We have another
All right,
hand
Miss
up,
Jeanie.
and it is Julia, area code 360. You are on the air.
Hey there, young lady. Welcome.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello, rock star.
How can we support you
it.
today?
Well, I wanted to tell you about an experience I had this morning. When I woke up, I was remembering something you had said, and about when you first wake up, start thinking about love, and generate the love in you and in your mind and heart. And so then I was like, oh, I wonder what's on his website that will help me, elicit these feelings. And so I was going through, and then I in your blog.
I just lost you, Julie. Julia, pardon me. Miss
Yeah,
Jeanie?
I don't hear her either. Yeah, she's still on the switchboard, Julia. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me, Jeanie?
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah.
So you were talking about
Got
going
you
to
back.
the website?
Oh, okay, yeah. So I was reading a blog, and it was about Wild Bill, and who was in a concentration camp, and they thought when and he was and I just started sobbing. I was just overwhelmed with like feelings of grief and sadness.
Wow. Do you have a genetic history of association with concentration camps, with the Holocaust?
No, not that. Yeah, well, not that I'm aware of. My family lineage is mostly Nordic, and but we have some German blood, some English blood, and Nordic, and it could maybe be through the German blood. I'm not sure, but I thought, wow, this is feeling really heavy. And
well, there was some pretty heavy-duty abuse in that Nordic world.
Oh yeah, well, all of us, all of humanity through history. It's
crazy.
We've been battering each other.
It's pretty bizarre, isn't it?
For a long time.
Time for a new day.
Yeah, it is, and that's what I was going for. But I guess there was something I needed to acknowledge there and feel and express, and so I allowed it to move through me. And then I was listening to Dr. Tim. I was a little late in the call, but he was saying some really amazing things about, our true nature is love. And so I was like, yeah, that's where that's what I want to embrace, is that aspect of myself. And another thing I wanted to talk to, but I know we're going to be running out of time in 7 minutes, so I don't know if it's enough time, but I really want to process this pain that I have in my body, and I just don't even know where to start. I got into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work because of that, and you talked about David Bohm and coherence, and I've read a little bit about David and listened to a couple things he has said on YouTube, and I can relate to the coherence part. And Dr. Joe also he encourages people to meditate because of that, getting back into coherence, right? That when you can lower your brain waves, and then the stuff that is in you comes up, and you can process that and become aware of it. But his thing is like, it comes up and you become aware of it, and then you ground and breathe, and then you change, right? That's the word. You're like, change. Okay, well, I was
That hasn't changed me yet. So.
Well, again, it's a process. Have you watched the, Jeanie, in the notes from the MindShifters and Still Point Breathing Workshop this weekend included the link to the 3-hour Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop on the forgiveness worksheet process. Have you watched that yet?
Yes, I did watch that. I watched that on Sunday. And yesterday I listened to, I found this page on your site about a love workshop, and it was you going through the worksheet with a gentleman. I think his name was John. It was Living as Love is Better. So I listened to those 2 calls yesterday, and which was good, right? Because he was having that. He had surgery, and there was some blockage in his brain, some swelling. So, and then I was... Yeah,
that was a powerful worksheet.
Yeah, that was, and he just did some amazing work with you. And because, like, when he called, he's, you're like, how you doing? And he's like, not good at all.
Right.
And he was very upset, and he was really just looking at some really bleak potentials. And then by the end of it, the 2 calls that you did with him, he was in just such a different place and talking about, breathing into his heart chakra. And so, I really enjoyed that.
So have you put the pen to the paper on the worksheet as yet? That's the next place
I have not
to go.
done that yet.
So that would be the most important place to go at this point.
Okay. I will do that.
And then as you do that, and you can do it through the app, or you can just download the worksheet from the website. As you do that, if questions come up, that's what we're here to support you in working through and comprehending that tool totally and completely.
Okay.
It is the core and the most important tool we teach. And I think one of the things I've observed over the years is that there's a lot of resistance to do that for people. And I think the reason is because there's an intuitive part of people that know what it is that they're going to have to face. And it sounds like you've tasted a little bit of it when you tapped into Wild Bill on the website, that story, and what he was able to do within the concentration camps. And so it sounds like there's going to be some heavy-duty stuff to move for you, and that's the most profound way I know to move it. If you do that on a consistent, persistent basis, it's the only thing I know. I mean, I've watched other people over the years who fall into a modality that, it changes things. In fact, Dr. Tim has shared several times on the show in the past how as a clinical psychologist that he'd run into and hear about a psychologist or a psychiatrist that just got monumental results with people. So he went off and registered for their workshop and did it, and he and other psychologists couldn't produce the result that this famous psychiatrist or psychologist was able to produce. Didn't matter how much they studied with him, just couldn't do it. And the thing that really attracted him to this work and what he's offered is he can hand this worksheet that we've developed to anybody, and anybody can produce those results. All they have to do is put the pen to paper to do it. So that would be my support. I'd invite you to, when I finish a Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop, I usually put out an invitation to people to make a commitment to do 5 worksheets a day for the next 40 days. I'll put that challenge, that invitation out to you and see what happens with it. And the show's going to cut us off at any second, but go ahead, we'll go till it does actually cut us off. any
I
other thoughts?
appreciate all the information. I really loved the Still Point breath work, and I really appreciate all the notes that Jeanie put together and sent to me, and all the resources. And I have that, that whole page of all the different workshops and sheets that were done with people in addiction. And so I'll be going through that. And so I just want to send my great, deepest appreciation and gratitude for you and Jeanie and all that you do. And you'll be hearing from me again.
Sweet.
And I will
Awesome.
take on the 5 worksheets today. I will attempt it.
All
so
right.
Make my best effort. Yeah. So both of you,
Very
I
cool.
hope you have a beautiful day filled with love.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Lots of love and blessings. All right.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. And thanks, everybody, for joining us. Have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world, and bless